I thought I knew what love looked like. I thought I understood what for better or worse meant when I said those words in front of our families 8 years ago. I was wrong about a lot of things back then, but I wasn't wrong about the man I wanted to become. My name is David Mitchell. I'm 35 years old, a mechanical engineer at Ford's Dearborn plant, pulling down $85,000 a year. Not rich, but comfortable. Steady. The kind of man who pays his bills on time, changes his oil every 3,000 miles, and believes that promises matter. I met Karen Stevens when she was 25 and I was 27. She worked as a bank teller downtown. Blonde hair always perfectly styled, smile that could light up a room, laugh that made you forget whatever was bothering you. I was the guy who came in every Friday to deposit his paycheck, too shy to do anything but nod politely, until the day she wrote her phone number on my deposit slip. "In case you ever want to discuss interest rates," she said with a wink that made my heart skip. We dated for 3 years. 3 years of her spontaneous road trips to nowhere, her insistence that we try every new restaurant in the city, her way of making ordinary Tuesday nights feel like adventures. I was the planner, the steady one who made sure we had gas money and restaurant reservations. She was the dreamer, the one who danced in grocery store aisles and convinced me to adopt a stray cat we named Buster. "We balance each other out," she used to say, curled up against me on the couch we'd bought together at a second-hand store. "You keep me grounded. I keep you flying." Our wedding was modest. Her family was small, mine was smaller, but perfect. 70 guests at St. Mary's, reception at the VFW Hall, honeymoon in the Bahamas that we'd saved for over 2 years. I can still see her on that beach the first morning, wearing my oversized t-shirt, coffee in hand, looking out at the ocean. "This is just the beginning," she declared, and I believed every word. The first year of marriage was everything I'd hoped. Karen quit her job when we found out she was pregnant. We'd both agreed she'd stay home with the baby, at least at first. I picked up overtime shifts to make up the difference. We painted the nursery together, assembled the crib, argued playfully over names. Ethan David Mitchell was born on a Tuesday in March, 7 pounds 6 ounces of pure perfection. I've never felt love like that before. Instant, overwhelming, protective. Karen was exhausted but glowing, and when she placed him in my arms for the first time, I knew I'd do anything to keep them both safe and happy. For the first 18 months, everything seemed normal. Ethan hit his milestones, sitting up, crawling, his first steps at 13 months. But something was different. He didn't babble like other babies. He didn't respond to his name. Eye contact was rare, fleeting. "He's just quiet," Karen insisted. "Some babies are quieter." But by his second birthday, we couldn't ignore it anymore. The pediatrician referred us to a specialist. The word came like a punch to the gut. Autism spectrum disorder. I dove into research that same night. Support groups, therapy options, early intervention programs. I learned about sensory processing disorders, communication delays, the importance of routine. I scheduled appointments, fought with insurance companies, became fluent in a language I'd never wanted to speak. Karen shut down. She'd imagined motherhood differently. Instagram perfect moments, family photos where everyone smiled, play dates with other moms, date nights that didn't require specialized babysitters. Instead, she got meltdowns in grocery stores, sleepless nights, and a child who needed constant structure and supervision. She stopped decorating our house, stopped planning weekend activities, stopped pretending everything was fine. I picked up every piece she dropped. 12-hour shifts, followed by cooking dinner, cleaning the house, managing therapy schedules, holding Ethan through sensory overloads that could last for hours. I was exhausted, running on coffee and determination, but I never considered giving up. Karen drifted further away each day. One night, when Ethan was almost 3, she finally said what had been building for months. "I didn't sign up for this," she declared flatly. My response was colder than I intended. "Neither did I, but he's our son." "He's your son," she replied with finality. That's when I knew something was ending. I just didn't know how soon or how completely she would shatter everything we'd built. I should have seen it coming. But when you're drowning, you don't notice someone else slipping away. You're too busy trying to breathe. Tuesday evening, October 15th. I remember the date because it's burned into my memory like a brand. I'd just finished a brutal 12-hour overtime shift. Extra money we needed for Ethan's speech therapy and occupational therapy sessions that insurance barely covered. My back ached, my hands were stained with grease, and all I wanted was to kiss my son goodnight and collapse into bed. The house was dark when I pulled into our driveway. Not unusual. Karen often put Ethan to bed early when he had rough days. But something felt wrong. The silence was too complete, too heavy. I unlocked the front door and called out, "Karen? I'm home." Nothing. I flicked on the living room light. Ethan's toys were scattered across the carpet, but not in the familiar chaos of a 3-year-old's playtime. They looked abandoned, like someone had stopped mid-game and simply walked away. "Ethan?" I called, heading toward his bedroom. Empty. His bed was made. Karen always made his bed after his afternoon nap, but his favorite stuffed elephant was missing. Panic started creeping up my throat. I rushed to our bedroom. Karen's side of the closet was half empty. Her dresser drawers hung open, contents rifled through. Her makeup bag was gone from the bathroom counter. That's when I saw it. A folded piece of notebook paper on the kitchen table with my name written across it in Karen's handwriting. My hands shook as I picked it up. "David, I can't do this anymore. I've tried for 3 years to pretend that this is the life I wanted, but I can't keep lying to myself or to you. Ethan being disabled means I'll never have the life I deserve. I've met someone who understands me, who sees me for who I really am, not just as a caregiver for a broken child. I'm leaving to live the life I should have had from the beginning, the life I gave up when I married you and had Ethan. Marcus and I are driving to California tonight. Don't try to find me or contact me. This is what's best for me. Ethan is at Mrs. Callahan's house next door. I dropped him off 3 hours ago and told her there was a family emergency. She doesn't know I'm leaving. I'm sorry it has to be this way, but I can't sacrifice my happiness anymore. Karen." I read it twice. Every word was a knife twisting deeper. She called our son broken. She called him a sacrifice. She'd planned this, orchestrated it while I worked overtime to pay for his therapy. I crumpled the note in my fist. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't throw anything or punch the wall like they do in movies. I just stood there in my empty kitchen, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. Then I walked next door. Mrs. Callahan answered on the first ring, her 70-year-old face creased with worry and pity. She'd known before I did. Karen had dropped Ethan off around 3 o'clock with a hastily packed overnight bag, claiming there was a family emergency, and she'd be back in a few hours. She seemed upset, Mrs. Callahan said quietly. Nervous. I asked if everything was okay, but she just said she had to handle something important. Ethan was in her living room building a tower with wooden blocks, completely absorbed in his task. When he saw me, he looked up with those beautiful brown eyes that matched mine. "Daddy!" He didn't run to me. Physical affection was still challenging for him, but his face lit up in that quiet way that meant he was happy. "Hey, buddy. Ready to go home?" I asked gently. "Is Mommy home now?" He wondered aloud. I picked up his overnight bag and forced my voice to stay steady. "No, buddy. Mommy had to go away." I carried him home, gave him his bath, read him his bedtime story twice like always, and tucked him into his bed. He fell asleep within minutes, exhausted from an afternoon of confusion and disruption he couldn't understand. Then I sat alone in the dark kitchen, staring at the crumpled note. Marcus. I didn't know any Marcus, which meant she'd been hiding this for God knows how long. Planning, lying, waiting for the right moment to run. But as I sat there in the silence, something became crystal clear. I didn't have time to fall apart. I didn't have the luxury of grief or rage or self-pity. I had a son to raise. The next morning, I called in sick to work and started making phone calls. By noon, I'd hired Mrs. Patel, a retired pediatric nurse who specialized in special needs children. By evening, I'd established new routines that would carry us forward. When Ethan asked, "Where's Mommy?" over the next few weeks, I gave him the simplest truth I could. "She had to go away, buddy. Is she coming back?" he would ask hopefully. "No," I answered honestly. After a few months, he stopped asking. By age 5, he'd forgotten her face completely. I made a choice that night. I chose to protect my son from a truth that would only hurt him. 10 years later, that choice would become my greatest weapon. 1 year after Karen walked out, when Ethan was 4 and I was 36, I filed for divorce. Grounds. Abandonment. The paperwork was straightforward, clinical in its coldness. Irreconcilable differences seemed insufficient for what she'd done. Karen didn't contest it, didn't respond to the court summons, didn't show up to any hearings. Her silence spoke louder than any defense she could have mounted. The divorce was finalized in 3 months. I kept the house, full custody of Ethan, everything we'd built together. Karen got nothing because she'd wanted nothing except her freedom. The first 6 months after she left nearly broke me. Working full-time while managing Ethan's complex care routine, therapy appointments, and frequent meltdowns pushed me to my absolute limit. I remember sitting in my car after particularly brutal shifts, too exhausted to walk inside and face another evening of sensory overload management and bedtime battles. There were nights when Ethan couldn't sleep, pacing his room until 3 a.m., humming the same tune over and over while I sat in the hallway, making sure he was safe, but respecting his need for space. I'd catch glimpses of myself in the bathroom mirror during those endless nights, watching gray creep into my temples, new lines etching themselves around my eyes. The insurance battles were their own special hell. Prior authorization requests for speech therapy, denials for occupational therapy, appeals that took months to process while Ethan's needs couldn't wait. I became fluent in medical billing codes and learned to navigate bureaucratic mazes that seemed designed to exhaust parents into giving up. But slowly, methodically, I built something better than what we'd had before. Mrs. Patel became family, a steady, unflappable presence who understood Ethan's needs instinctively and never once looked at him with pity or frustration. She taught me pressure point techniques for managing sensory overloads and showed me how to read his subtle communication cues. Ethan's progress was gradual but undeniable. By age 5, he could follow complex routines independently. By 7, he was speaking in full sentences, though still selectively. By 10, he was excelling in a specialized education program that challenged his remarkable mathematical abilities while supporting his social development. The years blurred together in the best possible way. Weekend routines became sacred. Saturday morning pancakes that Ethan insisted on measuring himself. Afternoon video game sessions where he patiently taught me strategies I'd never master. Evening movies where he'd curl up beside me during the scary parts. We built elaborate Minecraft worlds together, cities with perfect geometric precision that reflected how his mind organized information. He'd spend hours explaining the logic behind his architectural choices, his face animated with the joy of sharing something he'd created. I never dated, never had time, never felt the desire. My life was work and Ethan, and that felt complete. When well-meaning friends or colleagues suggested I get back out there, I'd just smile and change the subject. I'd found my purpose. By the time Ethan turned 13, making me 45, I barely recognized the broken man I'd been a decade earlier. Gray showed prominently at my temples now, and my hands were rougher from years of maintenance work and household repairs. But I was stronger than I'd ever been, more certain of what mattered. Ethan was thriving in his own beautiful way. He had a small group of friends from his program, kids who understood his quirks and appreciated his loyalty. He'd discovered computer programming and spent hours creating simple games with mathematical puzzles. His teachers called him quietly brilliant, and predicted great things for his future. I thought about Karen sometimes during those years, but only in passing, wondering vaguely where she'd ended up, if she'd found the life she'd dreamed of with Marcus. Mostly, I didn't think about her at all. She'd become irrelevant to our story, a chapter that had ended so completely it felt like fiction. She'd made her choice 10 years ago. I'd made mine. I chose my son, every single day, and I'd never regretted it once. For 10 years, I didn't hear from her. Not a phone call, not a letter, not a birthday card for Ethan. 10 years of complete silence. And then, on an ordinary Saturday afternoon, she knocked on my door. Saturday afternoon, March 18th. Ethan and I were deep into our latest Minecraft project, a massive castle complete with working redstone mechanisms that he'd designed himself. At 13, his understanding of complex systems far exceeded mine, but he was patient with my clumsy attempts to help. "Dad, you need to place the repeater facing the other direction," he said patiently, not looking up from his screen, but somehow knowing exactly what mistake I was making. "How do you even know that?" I laughed, fixing my error. "Pattern recognition. It's all just logic," he explained matter-of-factly. The doorbell rang. We both looked up, confused. We weren't expecting anyone, and weekend visitors were rare in our carefully structured routine. "I'll get it," I announced, pausing my game. I opened the door, and time stopped. Karen stood on my doorstep. 38 years old, 20 pounds thinner than when she'd left, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Her blonde hair was darker now, with gray roots showing, and there were lines around her eyes that spoke of hard years. But it was unmistakably her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then instinct took over, and I slammed the door in her face. "David, please!" she called out desperately. "Just 15 minutes! Please!" From the living room, Ethan called out, "Dad, who is it?" Karen pounded on the door again. "David, please, I'm begging you," she pleaded. Against every rational thought in my head, I opened the door again. Not out of kindness, but out of curiosity. I wanted to know what desperation looked like on the woman who'd called our son broken. 15 minutes, I said coldly. "Then you leave." "Thank you," she whispered gratefully. She walked into our house like she was entering a stranger's home, hesitant, fearful, taking in the changes I'd made over the years. New furniture, fresh paint, family photos on the mantel that didn't include her. I offered her tea out of cold formality, nothing more. We sat in the living room where she'd once played with our toddler son. I waited. I wasn't going to make this easy. Karen broke down immediately, tears streaming down her face as the words poured out. "David, I was so wrong. Marcus lied about everything. He wasn't wealthy like he claimed. He was barely surviving on unemployment and side jobs. He kept promising we'd get married, that we'd start fresh in California, but it never happened. Always next month or next year," she sobbed. I kept my expression neutral, watching her crumble. "He made me get a job waitressing. Then he started taking my paychecks, saying he was managing our finances, building toward our future. When I finally refused to hand over my tips, She touched her cheek unconsciously. "He hit me. Then he started bringing other women home, flaunting them, treating me like I was nothing," she continued, her voice breaking. My face showed no reaction. I'd learned to school my emotions during years of insurance appeals and IEP meetings. After 2 years, I ran. He followed me for months, threatened me, until I finally got a restraining order. I've been barely surviving for 8 years since then. Dead-end jobs, cheap motels, moving whenever he tracked me down," she finished miserably. She paused, waiting for sympathy that wouldn't come. "Why are you here, Karen?" I asked, my voice cold as ice. "I want a second chance. I'm Ethan's mother. I want to be part of his life again. I've learned so much about autism since I left. I understand now that I was overwhelmed, that I didn't know how to handle—" she began hopefully. I laughed, sharp, bitter, cutting through her rehearsed speech. "You don't want a second chance. You want a safety net," I stated flatly. Before she could respond, footsteps in the hallway announced Ethan's arrival. He appeared in the doorway, 13 years old and tall for his age, staring at this stranger in our living room with polite confusion. Karen stood immediately, forcing a smile through her tears. "Ethan, sweetie, it's me. It's your mom," she said desperately. Ethan's face remained blank. He looked at me, then back at her. "Who is she?" he asked simply. Karen's smile faltered. "Ethan, I'm your mother. I had to go away for a while, but I'm back now," she tried to explain. "My mom is dead," Ethan stated matter-of-factly, repeating the truth I'd told him years ago to protect him from a more complicated reality. "My dad told me she died when I was little." The color drained from Karen's face. "No, baby, I'm right here. I'm alive. I'm your mother," she protested frantically. "You need to leave," Ethan said calmly but firmly. "You're upsetting my dad." He turned and walked back to the living room, dismissing her completely. Karen stared after him, shattered. I stood and walked to the door, holding it open. "You heard him. Time to go," I said with finality. She followed me, broken and desperate. At the door, she stopped for one last attempt. "David, please, can you lend me $1,000 just to get back on my feet? I'll pay you back. I swear I will," she begged. My hand moved toward my pocket. For just a moment, hope flickered in her eyes. Then I pulled out my hand and extended my middle finger. "F off, Karen," I said with quiet venom. I slammed the door and watched through the window as she walked away, shoulders slumped, defeated, alone. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, nothing. That's when I knew I'd won. I don't regret anything. Not the sleepless nights when Ethan was small and couldn't settle. Not the hospital visits when his anxiety overwhelmed his small body. Not the years of sacrifice, the missed opportunities, the road not taken. Every choice I made led me to this moment, and this moment is exactly where I belong. Ethan is 13 now, thriving in ways that would have seemed impossible when Karen walked out 10 years ago. He's excelling in an advanced mathematics program, has a small but loyal group of friends who appreciate his dry humor and unwavering honesty. He's learning to navigate the world at his own pace, in his own way, and he's genuinely happy. That's all that matters. Karen, I don't think about her. I don't wonder where she ended up or whether she found the happiness she thought she deserved. She made her choice 10 years ago when she decided our son wasn't worth staying for. I made mine too. I chose Ethan. Every single day, every difficult moment, every small victory. And I'd do it again without hesitation. Last night was typical for us now. Ethan beat me soundly at a strategy game he'd been teaching me for months, laughing at my predictable tactics. We ordered pizza from his favorite place, the one that knows to leave off the green peppers that trigger his sensory issues. We watched a terrible action movie together, trading sarcastic commentary that made us both crack up. When he fell asleep on the couch during the credits, I carried him to his room like I've done thousands of times before. He's getting too big for it now, almost as tall as me. But some traditions are too precious to abandon. These moments are everything. These quiet evenings, these shared jokes, these comfortable silences. This is what Karen threw away for the promise of something better. This is what she called a sacrifice. She was right about one thing. She would never have had the life she deserved if she'd stayed. Because she didn't deserve this life. She didn't deserve Ethan's trust, his love, his forgiveness. She didn't deserve to witness his growth, his achievements, his beautiful mind finding its place in the world. When she showed up at my door, broken and begging, I gave her exactly what she deserved. Nothing. Not my anger, not my forgiveness, not my money, not access to the son she abandoned. Just nothing. I sleep well at night knowing I made the right choice. Family isn't about biology. It's about showing up when things get hard. It's about choosing love over convenience, commitment over comfort. It's about the promise you make not just in wedding vows, but in the daily decision to stay, to fight, to build something beautiful from broken pieces. Karen never understood that. She saw Ethan's autism as a burden to escape rather than a difference to embrace. But Ethan understands family. He knows what loyalty looks like, what unconditional love means. And so do I. To anyone reading this, family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about staying when things get hard. It's about love that doesn't quit. Karen never understood that, but Ethan does, and so do I. That's all we need. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.